Good morning. My name is Jackie Mond. I work at Family Service Toronto, where I'm the coordinator of Ontario Campaign 2000. I'm joined by Maroon Kassam, who is the Executive Director of Social Development Council of Cornwall and Area and a member of the Social Planning Network of Ontario. And to her right, Mike Creek, who is a spokesperson for Voices from the Street. We have a French spokesperson, Joanne Frenchkowski, in the audience from the Income Security Advocacy Centre, who will be available at the end of the press conference if there are questions from the French media. We're here this morning representing the 25 and 5 Network for Poverty Reduction, a province-wide network of 120 organizations and individuals. And we're here to release a report which summarizes what Ontarians want to see in the Ontario Poverty Reduction Strategy that the Ontario government is now developing. 1 year ago today, we were at the beginning of the Ontario election campaign. The 25 and 5 network was formed, and at that time, we called on all provincial parties to commit to a plan to reduce poverty in Ontario by 25% within 5 years and by 50% within 10 years. Today, we're at the beginning of the 2008 federal election, and so we will be making some comments about what we want to see in all federal party platforms. Over the past year, we've made tremendous gains to help Ontarians recognize that we all have a stake in reducing poverty in our province. Premier McGuinty made an election promise that poverty reduction would be a priority in the mandate of his re-elected government. He followed through last fall with the appointment of Minister Deb Matthews and the appointment of the first ever Cabinet Committee on Poverty Reduction. We understand that this committee is meeting today, and we hope that they'll be reading our report closely. Since last spring, there have been over 75 community consultations across the province where people provided input as to what they want to see in Ontario's poverty reduction strategy. Thousands of Ontarians came to these meetings in rural communities like Kincardine and Cornwall, in northern communities, Sault Ste. Marie, Thunder Bay, and in urban communities such as Hamilton, Brampton, Scarborough, Ottawa, Toronto. We tracked these meetings at the 25 and 5 Network for Poverty Reduction, and what we're releasing today is a summary of what Ontarians said that they want to see. The key message to the Premier and his caucus is this: Ontarians want the provincial government to develop a bold multi-year plan to end poverty in this province with a significant investment of new dollars. Ontario's economy has been growing for the past 10 years, yet our poverty rate remains stubbornly high at 10%. 1 in every 10 people in this province live in poverty. If there's an economic downturn coming, now is the time more than ever to invest in poverty reduction, both to support people who are already struggling on low income and to prevent more people from falling into poverty. So the 25 and 5 Network for Poverty Reduction is calling on Premier McGuinty and his caucus to keep the promise that was made, to put poverty reduction at the top of the legislative agenda this fall, and that we expect a bold anti-poverty plan to be released by December of this year with financial commitments beginning with a down payment in the next spring budget. The federal government must also be a partner supporting poverty reduction at the provincial level. An Angus Reid poll that came out last month showed that poverty ranks as the 4th most important issue in the minds of Canadians when they will decide who to vote for on October 14th. So the 25 and 5 Network for Poverty Reduction calls on all federal parties to commit to a national plan that would see poverty levels in Canada reduced by at least 25% over 5 years and at least 50% over 10 years, with a view to making poverty history within a generation. We also call on all federal parties to commit to working with provincial governments and support them financially in provincial poverty reduction strategies, such as the one that's being developed here in Ontario. I'd now like to turn to Maroon Kassam to talk more about the contents of the report that we're releasing today.
Thank you, Jackie. My name is Maroon Kassam, as you heard. I'm the director of a social planning organization in Cornwall and area in Eastern Ontario, and I'm here in the capacity of a board member of the Social Planning Network of Ontario. I'm going to share with you the highlights of some of the action across the province in the last few months. And these highlights are from the Poverty Watch Ontario report, and the details of this report is available on the Poverty Watch Ontario website. Before I continue further, I want you to know that I bring a multidimensional perspective to the issue of poverty. I'm a physician by profession, and I have witnessed the health inequity and the social exclusion due to poverty in many different nations, including the community I currently live in Eastern Ontario. I am an immigrant, and in spite of my high caliber of international education, I have lived in poverty in Ontario as a new Canadian. And as you see, I'm a woman of visible minority and have experienced my own share of workforce-related economic challenges. The Social Planning Network of Ontario is made up of 20 social planning councils, community development councils, resource centers, and planning committees located in various communities throughout Ontario. Each of the individual organizations is connected in the cause of effecting change on social policies, conditions, and issues in Ontario. One of the priorities that the network has been working on is poverty reduction strategies in Ontario. Working with provincial partners such as Campaign 2000 and the Income Security Advocacy Center in the 25 in 5 coalition and local networks in communities across the province. And as Jackie mentioned, with the support of thousands of Ontarians, there were about 75 community meetings held from March to August. These meetings included government-led consultations convened by Minister Deb Matthews and/or MPPs from around the province. Altogether, about 44 MPPs participated in these consultations, some of them in several community meetings. Here are the 3 main messages that emerge from these consultations in general. It's time for serious action. Let's help everyone become their best. Listen to those who live it. A quick elaboration of the 3 messages implies that a successful strategy for poverty reduction should be anchored by a bold multi-year plan with targets and timetables that invest significant resources to cut poverty. Ontario's strategy should not only focus on children, but to all those living in poverty. Those who live in poverty should continue to be consulted as the strategy is implemented and the progress is tracked. Here are some of the key policy areas that call for action according to the consolidated report. I'll just name them and then elaborate. Make work pay, ensure dignity for all, help build strong and supportive communities, count everyone in, keep the dialogue alive. In terms of make work pay, a good jobs strategy should be an integral component of an anti-poverty plan. Improve access to unionization, expanding health benefits, update and enforce labor laws so that temporary and contract workers are protected. Ensuring dignity for all implies a reform of our social assistance program to ensure a livable income for all. Building strong and supportive communities, implying affordable housing, early learning and childcare, public education, and community programs that help connect people. Count everyone in. The plan should include targeted measures to address the higher than average levels of poverty faced by the Aboriginal people, racialized communities, newcomers, single mothers, and people with disabilities. Keeping the dialogue alive, the success of a multi-year poverty reduction strategy will require ongoing monitoring, coordination, and accountability across various ministries, and the importance of interministerial dialogue to keep the strategy on track. A role for public advisory body is key, and so is continued engagement and consultation with all sectors of society. I would like to end, before I hand over to Mike, by saying that for me, at a personal level, doing this work has been a very humbling experience, for I've had the opportunity locally to sit in our poverty engagement workshops and listen to people who have shared their stories, dreams, and concerns. And to me, it highlights the need for our humanity and oneness to come together to focus at least on the first step of 25% decrease in the next 5 years. And handing over.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Michael Creek, and I'm with Voices from the Street. Today's first anniversary of 25 and 5. As a person who has lived and experienced poverty firsthand, I can tell you that others who struggle with poverty and low income on a daily basis continue to suffer. Waiting with anticipation for our Premier, Dalton McGuinty, and the Liberal government to come forward with a poverty reduction strategy. We'd like to recognize that the Honourable Deb Matthews and the government's Committee on Poverty Reduction have made a decent effort to consult with the poor in this province, people and organizations that served them. It was not perfect in any sense of the word, but it was a first step to meet directly with the poor in this province. Groups and organizations continue to mobilize around poverty and a poverty reduction strategy. The continued engagement of these individuals and communities and their participation in the endorsement of the 25 and 5 declaration as a group grows stronger. Our fight and commitment to fight for poverty reduction grows with each passing day. So our challenge as members of 25 and 5 are to make sure that you, the media, our leaders, citizens, small business owners, corporations, and unions make sure that poverty reduction strategies are being addressed. Our country, political issues, including the economy, the environment, and our mission in Afghanistan, our 3.7 million citizens who struggle every day with the unrelenting stigmatization of poverty. We need to continue to engage our communities. We can end poverty. We are a rich country, one of the richest in the world. Millions of Canadians over the last 10 years have fallen even deeper into poverty. Their numbers have increased to almost 4 million people. We must make poverty and poverty reduction a priority here in Ontario and engage the federal government to make sure that it's paying its fair share to help to reduce poverty in Ontario. Our leaders who want to lead this country today must recognize that by ignoring poverty, they are ignoring the realities of higher health and social costs. We challenge our provincial and federal leaders and all MPPs here in Ontario to make sure that the federal government takes on its share of its responsibilities on this issue. In our province, Ontario, and throughout Canada, the politics of poverty must be part of this election. Here in Ontario, we have challenged our government to come up with a poverty reduction strategy. We are waiting with anticipation for that day. Thank you.
The government's strategy is to reduce poverty through reducing child poverty. Your report seems to say that's too narrow, that won't work. How? Why?
The feedback from Ontarians was that it needs to be a poverty reduction strategy that addresses poverty faced by all people, with targeted measures for those groups where poverty rates are higher than average. So Aboriginal people, racialized communities, people with disabilities, newcomers. So that was the feedback from Ontarians based on those community consultations.
You single out the role of temp agencies. How do they contribute to poverty?
Again, this is the feedback that came from the community consultation. So many people are concerned first about the number of temp jobs. 37% of all jobs in Canada now are either temporary, contract, or part-time. In particular, temp agencies do not offer secure employment. They tend to be jobs that have low wages. They don't have benefits. And when people experience discrimination when employers lay people off from temp agencies and people seek recourse, they're not protected under the labor code. So part of the call is for updating the provincial labor legislation, the Employment Standards Act, so that all workers, including temp workers, contract workers, self-employed workers, have the same labor protections as do others.
So are you endorsing the recommendations that came out of the consultations, or are you just presenting them?
We're presenting the recommendations that come out from 75 community consultations held around the province, and these recommendations, not to our surprise, reflect very much the work and the recommendations of many of the members of the 25 and 5 coalition.
So you're endorsing them as well?
Yes, that's accurate.
What, in terms of income support, in terms of definable things that the government can do to reduce poverty in general, what would be the top 3?
I think the top 3 are around the area of good jobs, a number of initiatives that ensure that people who are working actually live above the poverty line in all cases. Number 2, to ensure that those who cannot work full-time and supported by social assistance have livable incomes. And number 3, the type of investments that support communities, affordable housing, affordable childcare, affordable transit, public education and training. There's no doubt that significant investments are needed both from a provincial and a federal level to develop an effective, long-term, bold poverty reduction strategy. The 25 and 5 network is currently doing some research to cost what we would like to see in a poverty reduction strategy and to identify some fiscal options to pay for that. We'll be releasing that report later this fall.
How confident are you that the McGuinty government will listen to your recommendations now, especially since most of these recommendations are not new, they've been ongoing for several years, particularly when they've all but ignored you in the past?
Does anyone else want to respond to that?
I think that through the consultations with Deb Matthews, I think they're being sincere in the fact that they're listening to us. And I really think that they realize that by not addressing poverty, the cost of poverty, it's costing taxpayers more money not to address the issues of poverty. So when you ask what is a program going to cost, you should be asking, by keeping people in poverty, how much is that costing to keep people in poverty? The health costs, the social costs are tremendous.
And just to add to that, the Premier made a promise. It was an election promise. He committed that in his renewed mandate that poverty reduction would be a priority. We've just seen from this national poll done by Angus Reid that poverty ranks 4th among Canadians as a key issue that they're going to keep in mind to vote on. That will be the same case here in Ontario. So we expect the Premier to keep that promise and to follow it through with a significant down payment in the spring budget on a long-term, bold poverty reduction strategy.
Once again, what's wrong with focusing on child poverty? Doesn't that get at the roots of it all?
The 25 and 5 network is a broad coalition, and the feedback that came out from the community consultations was that people want a strategy that addresses all people living in poverty, again with specific targeted measures for those who experience higher than average poverty situations.
Can I just add to that? Why would we want to ignore people who, just because they don't have children, why do we want to keep those people living in poverty? We have lots of people who are, single or married people who are living in poverty who do not have children. And just because you don't have children, should they be punished? It is it has to be an equitable solution.
Is the 25 and 5 target achievable without the federal government as a partner?
The federal government has an important role to play. It has a crucial role to play to achieve that 25% target. If we look at things like the Canada Child Tax Benefit, that's played a key role in reducing child and family poverty. If we look at issues like employment insurance, increasing access to employment insurance, the role of a federal working income tax benefit, plus investments in affordable housing, those are all key areas where the federal government must invest and must play a role in supporting provincial poverty reduction strategies.
If the next provincial government, or rather, if the next federal government says to the provincial government, we're just not interested. We're not interested in a housing program. We're not interested in your poverty reduction program. Can you hold the provincial government to its goal?
The 25 and 5 network is a broad coalition. We have members around the province in different sectors of the economy. We're continuing to build. We're holding a number of events in October to highlight October 17th, the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. We're going to keep the pressure on the provincial government, and we will also be working through a number of our coalitions who are national at the national level. Poverty reduction is not going away off the agenda as far as we're concerned.
I just want to add to that the federal government receives $20 billion extra from the Ontario taxpayers. And that money some of that money needs to come back into the province, especially now. We're on the verge of probably going into a recession, if we're not already in one. Politicians don't want to talk about that because it's bad news for them. But for people who are living in poverty, it's like being in a recession or all the time. So it's nothing new for people who are living in poverty. But what we need the federal government to do is to spend some of the hard-earned tax dollars that they collect here in Ontario to put it back into Ontario. And I don't think that if the federal government doesn't come on board, they say no to that sort of thing, they do that at their own peril. The taxpayers in Ontario will certainly make sure that they answer either in this election or the next election, whoever wins. They have to be fair.
The report does say that it will take significant new resources to fund a poverty reduction program. Are you saying that taxes should rise?
I'll just respond to that by saying stay tuned. We're doing some research. We're looking at fiscal options. In November, we'll have the next financial statement from the provincial finance minister. So we'll be releasing a report later this fall that will spell out some fiscal options to fund what we want to see in an effective long-term poverty reduction strategy in Ontario.
So you're going to wait until after the fall economic statement?
I can't give you an exact date. We're hoping to release a report later this fall.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Thank you. If people would like to speak one-on-one with Maroon or Mike, we can meet in the hallway afterwards. Thank you.